You're responsible as a developer to every single one of those people that hold your asset, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or, whatever, some token. If they're giving you their money, you're responsible to them, legally responsible to them. So, I think that there's probably a possibility that the Bitcoin core devs get sued for $2 trillion because they are being irresponsible with $2 trillion of market cap. It's going to be a bad day for everybody if they don't take responsibility.
Welcome back to the Bitcoin Source, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, and the tech that's shaping our decentralized future. I'm your host, Dawdu, and today we've got a heavy hitter in the studio. Our guest is Ian Smith, the CEO and CTO of Quantum EVM, a platform that's out here trying to save blockchain from the quantum computing apocalypse. This guy has been in the tech space for over 25 years. He's been all in on Web. He's got some of the wild insights on how quantum computing can mess with the Bitcoin protocol and what we can do about it. Ian, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. And I'm trying to save all blockchain, not just Web3. It's just that Bitcoin has such a good plan already that, I think that Ethereum needs more help. Like they need more help.
And before we get into the quantum craziness, I want to set the stage for the audience. So you're building solutions for problems most people don't even know exist yet. So let's start with the basics. Who is Ian? Give us the origin story and where'd you come from? What got you obsessed with this tech space?
My first foray into cryptocurrency was 2002, and I had designed a bad protocol where you could use RSA cryptography as individual coins. And I didn't solve double send to my satisfaction, so I didn't publish it. But one of the things that I did is I attacked my own designs over and over and over, trying to figure out, what's the vulnerabilities, what's the problems. And in RSA, I'd gone into, attacks that involved factoring, which includes the GNFS, the generic number field sieve. And that told me, with some additional math that I personally did, that the cell processors, the PlayStation 3s, would actually be able to break RSA cryptography. And the number one customer of the PlayStation is actually the NSA. And so they've probably been breaking RSA cryptography since 2003. But that experience also brought me to quantum computers and Shor's algorithm before any of them had even been, done in labs. And I've just been checking in every few years. Hey, is quantum close? Is quantum close? And the hardware leads to this sense of complacency because the hardware doesn't improve that well. But the algorithms, that's where the real scare is. So, I was almost an MTGOX victim. Almost bought. I was like, I'm gonna buy Bitcoin XM crashes to 20 cents. But then I couldn't get the fiat onto the chain very well. I couldn't. So I was not one of the very early adopters, even though I tried to be. And just onboarding. It's always been about the user. And then in 2015, I joined into Web3. I was one of the Ethereum Classic crowd time since 2016. And there's a lot that goes on inside Web3. And I like all blockchain, but for me, it's always about what does this do for humanity? Like, what's the use case that makes this make sense? And I think that Web3 does more of that than Bitcoin does because of all this JavaScript going to the blockchain. But I really like all blockchain, and I think that distributed ledgers are a great technology. In most of their forms. And some of them, I'm just like, why does this exist? And so for me, my perspective is always one of, does this help us?
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So like, what was it about Web3? Because there's so many projects that we have out here. Like, was there a specific project or like a light bulb moment where you said, this is going to change everything?
So the light bulb moment for me was seeing that you could have a mixture of on-chain data collated directly to a database, using JavaScript in real time and you could verify those records from your wallet. A moment for me hasn't actually happened. And this is sad because what I want is to treat those public keys as a cryptographic target for like message sending and so forth. And that hasn't happened to the extent. There's some of that is now occurring with some of these chat protocols. But I mean, since you can't target individual users of a website by cryptography, and certainly not as a third party, then it's really difficult to see one of our main use cases. The one of the things that Web3 can do that nothing else can, and we just haven't really implemented. But yeah, my light bulb moment was like 2015. Hey, we can have, records. We can have logic in Bitcoin, and I'd kind of tried to see how far I could push Bitcoin a bit. And the difficulty for me was that I couldn't associate execution with results to the user. You just have to like keep polling the chain to see if anything's happened. It's kind of like a manual process, and then the wallet has to have that functionality. And the difference for Web3 is that, well, the website does that for you, and then the website tells you what the results are, and then the website can actually process the results. And it's like that's the big reason why I think that Web3 has more use cases. But I think that a lot of times, Bitcoin is the best solution. A lot of times I think that when you're talking like banking protocols, yeah, I can see use cases for lots of different technologies. But when you're talking like, okay, well, I want to have a good user experience and I want the transaction to change something for the user immediately, probably a Web3 experience.
For sure. And I kind of want to shift gears because I talked to someone previously on this podcast. He's a developer by the name of Hunter Beast, and he's really big into the quantum computing stuff. He's creating some BIPs. I think he even spoke at MIT in regards to this. And now you're seeing like all these different major tech companies, whether it's Google, they're all coming out with these quantum computing chips. And I think a lot of people that are not in this space and have no idea what we're talking about or are not tech geniuses, they would love for someone like you to kind of break down for me, like, what is quantum computing and why should folks care about this? Why is this like not some sci-fi stuff anymore? And this is legit something that we're going to have to worry about in the next few years.
So I support Hunter Beast's BIP 360. BIP 360, I think, is what we probably should do. I don't know if it's going to have enough support. Quantum computers can take and use physics to do math. And that unfortunately includes turning your public key into your private key. And that allows the attacker to spend your money. In the case of Web3, it also includes being able to act as an imposter for anybody in the network. Like, hey, I'm just going to unstake all of these resources and send them to my wallet, or I'm going to slash all of these other people, or I'm going to drain this bridge. The quantum computer allows the attacker to just become anybody in the network because all of our authentication is done with one equation. And that one equation gets solved by quantum computers. Do you want a longer version of that?
No. That's pretty a pretty condensed version. Like I think that my audience, they're pretty much entrenched into the crypto space, so they should have an understanding. But when I talked to Hunter Beast, he gave like a really complex explanation for it. So the one you gave was perfect.
And there's a lot of explanations, and unfortunately, like most of them are accurate, and most of them are also incomplete. It's so hard to get a really solid handle on this because it doesn't do things the way that we expect. Phones, computers, all of these just do addition, but quantum computers can do something in comparison. They can only compare and add. Everything that you see is just two operations. And there's over 45 different operations that quantum computers can do, and they're all high-level math. No, you won't be able to play your video games on a quantum computer, but you will be able to communicate through wormholes, maybe.
It's insane. I always thought that this was like a decade out. And after having a conversation with Hunter Beast and people like yourself, I think that this is like something we're going to be dealing with within like the next 3 years. The way that things are just rapidly being innovated and things are moving at such a fast pace. You have AI now. And I think it's kind of terrifying because whether it's blockchain, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, any of these cryptocurrencies, they're sitting on millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's kind of like a honeypot. And, it kind of reminds me of like flat screen TVs. Like when they first came out, they were so expensive. Now you can get one super cheap. And I feel like this quantum computing game is going to become like that too. Like right now, it's really expensive to get a chip. But I feel like in 5 to 10 years, it's going to be pretty easy for probably anyone to just run a quantum computer and just diligently work at trying to crack encryption, crack private keys, crack cold storage wallets or whatever. And I think that a lot of people are not realizing, like, what if a quantum computer went rogue today? What could that actually do to the blockchain? What could that actually do to Ethereum or Bitcoin?
It turns a $5 trillion asset class into zero. And I mean, Bitcoin will break in stages, whereas Ethereum is just all at once. Web3, and it's not exclusive to Ethereum. Solana, it's a XX network. All of them are the same. They're all just going to break all at once. And some of them have like a small piece that's quantum resistant. And Bitcoin does too, in that the hashes are safe, but all of the old public keys are exposed. And that's a $600 billion asset that's waiting to be solved for Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin goes down, everybody else goes down too. It's not, if Bitcoin goes on a big sale, they're all going down. So I feel a necessity to save Bitcoin, a very strong necessity. But these markets are all correlated. And the biggest issue is that there is a company that raises $100 million and they're being told, hey, you can have this $600 billion if you're the first company to take it.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. I can turn 100 million into 600 billion? Really? So the availability of quantum computers right now, and probably for the next 3 years, maybe 4 years, is going to be very, very server based, because they actually get faster and faster for each additional machine. If you triple the size, they go 7 times as fast for the active volume architecture. And then when you look at doing them in a network, it runs 45 times faster than running them on a single machine, but the network has to be very close for that number. Any physical separation in the network increases a huge amount of latency, which is used for memory, but you can't really spread these out. So it's just going to be a bunch of very large server farms for a little bit. There, right now it's $9,000 for about 5 qubits. When you look at Oxford Ionics, they have 256 qubits, and it runs at room temperature. You don't need to get liquid helium in your. The things that PsiQuantum with photonics runs on is liquid helium-2. Most people want to call it helium-2. It's called a helium. But when you look at IBM and you look at Microsoft, they require helium-3 and helium-4, which either comes from volcanic activity or nuclear reactors. They're fission or fusion with just neutrons bouncing around everywhere. And that's expensive. That's just some expensive stuff. So if you do buy a quantum computer, ask if you need helium-3.
It's nice. And you're dropping so many knowledge bombs left and right. Now I want to talk about solutions, because you're not just out here pointing out problems. Quantum EVM is all about making blockchain quantum safe. So what's the game plan? What's a practical step someone building a D app or even just holding Bitcoin or Ethereum can take to protect themselves?
So if you're holding right now, just make sure you don't have a public key exposed on the majority of your assets. And then what that means is, make a new wallet. Let's say you're on Ethereum and you've got a whole bunch of tokens. Make a new wallet with the recovery phrase. and send all of your assets to that new wallet. And don't spend from that wallet. If you do spend from that wallet, make another new wallet. And this is basically emulating UTXO on the Ethereum network. If you're on Bitcoin, the central exchanges all keep reusing the same addresses over and over. And so they have I looked last week, I think I saw about $120 billion in reused central exchange addresses. So yeah, don't park your Bitcoin with them. They don't protect it very well. Make sure that you do not have an exposed public address. In terms of like when does blockchain break? The first breaks will be against the public keys that are already known, and Bitcoin will still be safe to spend for a years or maybe 1 to 3 years after the first like Satoshi's wallet gets broken. Ethereum, the public keys are always exposed, and it's not just at the time of transaction. It's as soon as you do one transaction, like confirming, then you start basically as soon as you unlock your wallet on a new website, you've exposed your public key. That is a problem. So we have to replace all of the math ahead of time, and we have to complete the migration ahead of time. During migration, basically the attacker would be able to migrate funds that they don't own to quantum safety, and we wouldn't have any ability to get back the assets. It's blockchain, and worse, it's blockchain being shoved from one chain to another. So part of the vulnerability in Web3 is that it's not just the wallets that are vulnerable, it's the proof of stake system, and it's also all of the contract addresses. The contracts aren't vulnerable themselves, but if there's any admins or owners, those wallets, then the attacker would have whatever permissions those wallets would have. Or when you look at dexes and things, there's a whole bunch of ways in which there's sometimes backdoor access to manage like listing of new keys, which includes admin, but sometimes they're not using admin officially to do those tasks. So even if you were to scrub 100% of all of the wallet addresses, you still wouldn't have a secure network because they're using old cryptography to validate those contracts. But there's no way they'd be able to get all of those admins to migrate. So anytime you have a mixed environment, it's the lowest security is the security of that environment. It's not the highest security, it's the lowest security. So if they have any exposed addresses, that's where people attack. And that's what gets exploited, and that's what crashes the network, or drains or slashes or hurts everybody. And the biggest concern I have is, well, what if they replace a known good contract with an update that is a bad contract? And so now you've drained everybody's quantum safe funds, and the contract is used by billions of dollars a day, and now it's all gone. So we have to have a clean network with no old cryptography, no ZK snarks, no ZK proofs. We use Crystal's dilithium 5, which is the highest security level. And we have the proof of stake system working, and we're working on getting the EVM part working. The way to protect yourself, if you're a DApp owner, is just going to be a recompile and publish. And change one letter on the libraries to add a Q in front of the name. And we're working really hard to make that as seamless as possible. The design of Ethereum does not follow standards very well, and there's 8 different ways that they encoded an address. And we're working on it, but it's not very simple.
Yeah, it makes me think about a few things. I know Ethereum recently had an update, and they switched over from I believe, was it proof of work to proof of stake? I might be flipping them either or.
You're
I'm
correct.
now think Yeah, so I think now it makes my wheels start spinning. It's like, was there like some foresight there where like maybe they were aware of this quantum computing issue? I mean, I know they did it for like update reasons and stuff like that, just to be able to contain as many people that are on the network. But it also makes me wonder, like, were they worried about quantum computing, and was this kind of like the first soft update for them to kind of move over all the transactions to make it more of a secure type of scenario?
They're doing the opposite. They're making it more and more insecure over time. Proof of stake is more quantum vulnerable, and then they just put in SVP, which is state proofs. And state proofs are not quantum safe, and they were initially rejected because they knew it was going to be, less safe, and then they put them in anyway. So even if they give Vitalik his self-destruct button of rewinding the chain, breaking all of the bridges, breaking all of the layer twos, breaking everybody's database state in every dApp, and burning between 30 to 60% of the wallets where you have to use your mnemonic phrase. This is Vitalik's plan. This isn't what I recommend. This is Vitalik's plan. You have to use your mnemonic phrase for every transaction. It goes into a ZK Stark, which is quantum safe, but and then that means that all the custodial wallets are burned. That means that most of these exchange wallets are also burned because they're not using mnemonic phrases either. They're just using database generated wallets that are, being created as needed. And that is going to burn everybody. It's a self-destruct button for Ethereum. And there is one thing that they are doing that will contribute to safety, and that's account abstraction. But they're allowing insecure cryptography to validate it. So it's like one step forward, two steps back.
And it makes me think too, like what do you do to get the average crypto dev to care about this, right? Like, there's so much incentive to develop or to patch on the Ethereum network as a developer. And I think most folks are just trying to hodl or flip NFTs or just do different things. Like they're kind of like distracted, right? Like, how do you get them to think about post-quantum stuff without their eyes glazing over?
Or it's pretty easy. You're dead in 2 years. You've got 2 years, And this is kind of a funny litmus test, because if they're intending to rug pull, they don't care.
Yeah.
So I can tell who's going to rug pull by who cares. If they don't care, sometimes it's because they're trusting their tech guy. Their tech guy hasn't read the papers on my Twitter account. They haven't, followed the news very well. And sometimes there's like the same as the Bitcoin core dev saying, oh, it's a problem for 10 years down. No, it's not. And if it was just a hardware only solution, I could maybe see like a 5-year delay. But they're using algorithms literally from 4 or 6 years ago to say, look, it's 10 years off. Look, we don't need 6 billion qubits. We need a few 100,000. And that number came down this week. I was saying, when you do 1 million, but now I'm not sure. There's another algorithm. It's got flaws, but it's an optimistic version of Shor's. So I tell people, like, look, you have to prepare ahead of time. And if they don't care, I know that they really don't care about their investors and the people that are using sometimes they panic, and I can tell those people care. Sometimes only the technical person in the room panics. And then everybody else looks at him and they realize that he's pale and shaking, and they go, oh, maybe this is real. So it's a little bit of a interpersonal dynamics, and also like I think a lot of VCs are just going to cash out before it's time, because the VC response has been pretty mild.
I think they're aware of it, or like you said, they're not. I don't know. I just feel like I've been in this space since 2017, so I've seen a whole gamut of all the shenanigans you could possibly see damn near. And it's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's just because of like the presidency, or just like everybody's just distracted. Like, it's like no one's really, you can't focus on one thing, because like every day it's something new, right? Whether it's for whoever, it's like it's just so much distraction. And then when you do see the crypto side of things, it's like you're seeing adoption, you're seeing ETFs, you're seeing administration and government who was so anti-crypto kind of embracing it, but now it's like, okay, now you guys have to get serious and really get technical now and get into the weeds of like what this thing is. It's like it's very base layer, like, oh, I can make some money, or oh, I can make the dollar more sovereign, or I can make this the crypto capital of the world. But it's like it won't matter if it gets hacked, right? It won't matter if China's working on a quantum computer right now that could just rug pull everybody, and it's like then there is no point in doing any of this.
Yeah, quantum is the ultimate rug pull. It'll rug pull
Yeah.
Bitcoin. The the Chinese are very advanced in quantum. They're about, I think
Mhm.
it's 3 times bigger and 5 times faster than Google's quantum computer. They got,
Yep.
all of the news and headlines, and China's bigger headlines didn't actually hit the news in the US. It's kind of there's a polarity where the news cycles kind of revolve around IBM, Microsoft, and Google, but those are not the leaders in any continent. Those aren't the leaders. They're not the leaders in North America. They're not the leaders in Asia. I mean, Japan has a better quantum computer than Google does.
Yeah.
So it's it's harsh.
And they're also on that side of the world where Taiwan is the bread and butter for all the chips. So there's this battle for Taiwan, whether it's China wants it, America wants it, and it's like, of course, it being on the Asian side of the world, all the Asian countries have quicker access and better access to those chips, so it makes sense why they would have better quantum computing than we do.
China also went around to all of like Alibaba and all of these companies and said, all of your quantum researchers now work for us, and we're taking all of their equipment. And so they nationalized everybody. And then they're developing multiple different architectures of quantum computers in parallel. They split them into teams and had them all work on different stuff. And they're taking the same approach they're taking to the moon. They're trying to go to the moon, and they're trying to go to quantum, and they're pushing hard and fast. The the big issue for me for Taiwan is that if China retakes Taiwan, or takes Taiwan, depending on if you want to say, well, it's Portugal. Portugal owns Taiwan because they have, for most of the last 400 years. But if China takes Taiwan, then they own the ability to produce computers. There will be no way to produce computers that does not involve China in some way. Everybody would need to ask China, can I buy a computer? Not just laptops, not just phones, servers and everything else too. So that's the real fear I see from a technologist perspective, is that one side would have something that used to be shared resources, where China made some, Taiwan made some, Malaysia made some, Korea made some. Now it's just becoming a unipolar world where all of that production is now being basically going to be put under a Chinese flag if they can do it. So that's a scary thing. And China has the express goal. They stated on the news, we must destroy Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the means by which people are transferring money outside of China. 1/3 of their GDP flees China every year in the form of Bitcoin. So they're saying we have to destroy Bitcoin because it's the only way they'd be able to kind of like push domestic consumption, which they need for their economy to get it, as long as Bitcoin is a safer investment and a safer way to transfer those funds.
And I want to ask about a lesson that you learned building quantum EVM, but before that, I want to know something, or just your thoughts on this, just having this conversation. Why is it that Taiwan is so centralized as far, or Malaysia is so centralized with building building computers? Is it a cheap labor thing? Is it all the smartest people that are working on this industry or in that area? Why don't we as Americans or Canadians build our own Taiwan version where we have that can create jobs, right? Like, why don't we have people that are laser focused on making that an industry in the West?
The economics question, which I'm opinionated about, but it's just, it's an unqualified opinion. And the reason I think that this kind of centralized is because there's one industry leader, and there isn't usually space for being number 2 or number 3 in any, like how often do you really search Bing?
Yeah.
How often do you go to Alta Vista now? And people tend to aggregate towards the industry leader, and those industry leaders are then able to wield that influence against the second and the third parties, which they do in chips. That is a cutthroat war. And TSMC, Taiwan company, became the best, and they worked hard to become the best. And I think part of that is work ethic. People in America and Canada don't really focus on becoming the best at something until they feel like it's a source of national pride. Then they will definitely work hard. But if they're just able to order their latte, they do. And so the United States became a service-oriented economy and not a production-oriented economy. One of the other flaws is the tax law, because if you look at cars, they're like 99% assembled elsewhere, and then they do the final assembly in the United States and say, hey, look, it's built in the USA. And all of the profits go to those intermediaries that performed all the other steps. And that tax law has created tariff workaround, or income tax workarounds. Tariffs are a way of bringing production home, because if they're paying all of this, if they're paying 98% of the profits to these intermediary companies in other countries, well, then they're going to pay tariffs on those intermediary profits as well. And so tariffs, because the United States was not using tariffs and everybody else was, it made more sense to do things a certain way. And that includes, chip production and car production. I don't think that the companies don't pay income tax, and I don't think that you'd be able to really get them to pay income tax at a substantial level, but they will have to pay tariffs, partly from the way that they've rigged and sometimes, skewed their supply chains. And those supply chains all aggregate to whatever's most efficient. And what was most efficient for getting the lowest cost and the best price tended to be Taiwan, and all of the shipping that was coming out of Taiwan, as well as the production. But it's not just computer chips. It was hard drives a few years ago, and there was a flood in Taiwan, and then there was no hard drives for like 9 months. There was no hard drives. Nobody, you couldn't buy them. It's also Puerto Rico had a hurricane, and suddenly there was no IV bags for the world.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not diversifying. What we're doing is we're aggregating for efficiency, and we're giving all of the money and all of the control to one company or one region. And we end up very brittle as a result. So it's either you be very efficient or you be very resilient. But it's a choice between those two. Do you want lower prices, or do you want safety in case of political drama?
Makes sense. And that's why you're seeing so much pushback with the tariffs now. It makes perfect sense. So, are you going to respond to that, Ian?
I could talk about that for hours. I'd rather talk about, cryptography and quantum.
For sure. What lesson did you learn from building quantum EVM that you wish you knew when you started?
Ethereum's code is crap.
Yeah.
It's absolute crap. Like,
there's too many devs. There's too many devs. Like I code a little bit, so I'm a little bit familiar, and it's like when you look at the job market for Solidity developer versus Bitcoin Core developer, it's like, I mean, there's so many freaking jobs to build on Ethereum, and it's almost like it goes back to like quantity versus quality, right? There's just, if you know a little bit of JavaScript, you can just become a developer in Ethereum. And it's like, it takes some skill set to really know how to build this. So I don't want to cut you off, Ian, but like, I just had to get that out because I can see the difference for sure.
And I think they have a very high turnover rate, because I look at code and I'm like, I'm seeing the same thing programmed multiple different ways.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one's active without actually running a debugger and stepping through, because there's three pieces of code that do the exact same thing. Address. Address should be like a C++ object, right? It's 8 different data types. It's a string, it's a JavaScript string, it's a character string, it's a byte string. I'm just 8 different fundamental data types. It should have been one. It should have, maybe 2. It's awful. One other thing I wish I'd known is I wish I'd known that the compiler was enforcing address length, and 160 bits isn't going to be quantum safe, and Bitcoin is going to have to increase their address size also as part of being quantum safe. You can't just run on 160 bits now. For reference, if you look at the Bitcoin hash power, they have about a 55% chance of colliding with a 160-bit address every year, just from Bitcoin's hash power. Not even optimized for, well, it's kind of optimized for hashing, right? But you're looking at what could be a birthday attack, but isn't. And that's scary. That the number is actually that. It's a significant percentage at being able to do a 160-bit collision right now. Now, if you're talking about, there's 4 different attacks against Bitcoin from quantum computers. The first one is turning the old exposed public keys into private keys, and that will probably happen. I was saying 2027, but it might be 2026 now. The second is when that machine gets faster, where the solve time goes from 8 hours down to an hour, then you're going to be able to start sealing some transactions off of the mining. Hunter B says, well, you can just have the private mining pools, and then you're trusting the miner with your public key. And if that miner colludes with the quantum attacker, then your funds would still be vulnerable. But it's not trusting everybody. It's just trusting one group. And then the third attack is the one that people seem to have aggregated on, and that's, well, you can mine with quantum computers. Well, eventually you can mine with quantum computers. But it could be that silicon is just always more cost-effective at doing so. I think that the ultimate, kind of transistor we're getting close to, and the ultimate transistor would, obviously be one. We're a couple atoms thick right now. I think we're like 4 atoms thick on some of this stuff. I mean, we're getting really close. People have these marketing gimmicks, and they'll claim that they're getting closer and closer to. We're getting close, and silicon is going to be an effective means of mining Bitcoin always. Because we're doing addition. Is it going to be the most cost effective? Well, quantum computers, when they start to really scale, when Intel starts shipping, millions of qubits a day, well, then maybe processor. And they have these wafers that are this big that they were making 2 years on the wafer. It wasn't a single circuit. They were only having 7 qubits on that circuit, but still, 4,000. 14 of those a day, fully automated production from one garbage can sized facility that both produced and tested it. 14 a day. That's a lot. So Intel's going to lead production. And when Intel will sell you mining equipment for Bitcoin, well then, you'd be able to mine Bitcoin more cost effectively. Or at least with quantum computers. And then the fourth attack is, maybe it would be, if mining Bitcoin, this is Grover's algorithm. If that happened in say 2032, then you'd be able to retrieve the truly lost Bitcoins that there was a hash only and no public key known. Then those might be retrievable, say 2035 or 2037. So those are the 4 stages of attack. They're going to occur over the next 15 years. And I'm really hoping that we get BIP 360 and people migrate their coins to quantum safety, and then they'll still be valuable. That would be great.
Yeah. I love what Hunter Beast is doing. Hopefully, people, the consensus of this ecosystem figures out okay, this is something that we have to do. Bitcoin Core right now, they're getting some heat because they're just doing dumb shit. They're just approving dumb stuff that's not really important, but you know,
They won't talk about quantum for another 10 years because they're still
yeah,
busy talking about the things that were discussed 10 years ago.
exactly. Yeah. Yes. You know, when Gavison left, and I just think that a lot of the OGs that are really good at this stuff are either too stressed out, too old, or they're tired of fighting with consensus. They're tired of people battling ideas. And it's like, of course, that's just natural. I mean, Ethereum is even worse. We're not even going to get into that, but it's like, it's kind of scary because it's like anything, right? Like the old timers have a certain quality and skill set that we cannot remove ourselves from because they just have a lifetime of experience. And the younger guys, the younger devs, like, I'm one of the younger generation. We're coming in with new ideas, new ways of doing things, but we haven't been seasoned enough in life to realize the impending dangers of some of the actions that we're taking. And, when I see things like quantum EVM, it's like, this guy is smart. He knows tech. He understands the ramifications of putting the wrong code in or having a bug be exploited and it just reverberates throughout the whole ecosystem. No one's paying attention to that. No one's like, oh, is Ethereum going to go to 20,000 a coin? Like, no, everybody's worried about like where it's going to go and not like what could happen before it gets there.
And I think Gav Wood, the creator of Ethereum, I think Gav Wood is an amazing innovator. And he felt like I watched some interviews from him, so I didn't have this as a personal discussion. But, he's like, I'm an innovator, and it felt like Ethereum was already cooked and just had to be in maintenance mode. So he moved on to Polkadot. And he's continued to innovate and continue to improve. And now they're running on architectures. And Vitalik's, post a few weeks ago was, maybe we should do the same thing as Gav Wood did with the Risk V architecture. Wow.
Yeah.
He didn't actually
Don't say it, just do it.
say that Gav Wood did it. He just says, maybe we should do this. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Vitalik, you're such a thought leader at copying Gav Wood. So, there's going to be ecosystem drama all over the place because, number one, there's a lot of ego in the room. And I try to have very little ego. I try to make sure that my code compiles. And that's a great way to have less ego. No matter how confident you are that this time you fixed the bug, the compiler may not agree. Who wins that debate? The compiler. So, I don't write as much code as I wish I did these days, but it's a great way to stay humble, is to actually compile code. And I don't think that a lot of people, especially in the JavaScript world, they're just like, oh, it worked for me, must be fine. I don't think that they have had that humbling experience of a compiler saying no. And it's a very great way to check your ego at the door. And a lot of ego in the Bitcoin community is based off of things that we don't see, and a lot of the motives are things that we don't see. So there's a bunch of drama as people get called out for corporate sponsorship for a feature that nobody else wants. And I don't think that is the path that we should take to being a whole community. I think that is a path to becoming a more and more and more and more fragmented community. And I'm hoping to be at the Bitcoin event in Vegas, and I'm not looking forward to it because there's way too much ego in the room.
I've been to a few conferences, and I could tell you right now it's more showboating than innovation. It's a party, it's not really. It used to be the early ones, but now it's like it's a fanfare, right? So
I'm looking forward to the technical one in October.
Yeah. And one last question for you, Ian. If you had to give one piece of advice to any hodler of crypto listening to this right now about preparing for the quantum future, what would it be?
You're going to have to migrate.
Yeah.
No matter what you're using, you're going to have to migrate. Even if you're using QRL's migrating, so you have to migrate even if you're using QRL. There's only a few legit post-quantum projects out there, and I'm going to give them all a quick mention. QRL, Cellframe, and Wachima. Nobody else is quantum safe. Many people have labeled themselves as quantum safe. I have links to their GitHub, and their GitHub disagrees. There's over 40 scammers in this space that claim to be quantum safe, and their GitHub says no.
Crazy.
So,
well, Ian,
migrate probably to one of those three.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Ian, you're a legend for this, and, the things that you're doing, what you're building, I think is going to be, hopefully, people are aware of this, they listen to this episode, and they really take this into account, like, okay, now we're past the frontier at this ecosystem now. Like, we've been in the trenches where no one believed that this was a real thing. No one ever believed it would ever get to a certain level. Now it's like, it's here now. Governments are in, bankers are in, institutions are in, and the hackers are in too. The quantum computers are in too. So now we have to do something revolutionary.
And we have this great adoption. Look at how popular Bitcoin is. But that's also a responsibility. You're responsible as a developer to every single one of those people that hold your asset, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, some token. If they're giving you their money, you're responsible to them, legally responsible to them. So, I mean, I think that there's probably a possibility that the Bitcoin core devs get sued for $2 trillion. Because they are being irresponsible with $2 trillion of market cap. That's going to be a bad day for everybody if they don't take responsibility.
And it's a very small amount of those people that exist in the world. And also the scary part is that it's one thing to lose money, but it's like, whose money are you losing? Now you're losing BlackRock's money. Now you're losing Coinbase's money. Like, you're dealing with some really big wig people, and you don't want to be on the bad list with those kind of people. So
I heard Coinbase is total gangster, New York gangster style. Do you really want to piss them off? Not for billions.
Yeah, seriously. And there's like 15 core devs in the world. Like, they can easily find out. It's not like there's hundreds of them. They're just a very small community. It's scary.
You're responsible to those people. Thank you very much for the lovely discussion. Satoshi is black. I love the t-shirt.
Yes. Yes.
Does that... yeah. I keep thinking of like what that would imply. Like, maybe that's what we haven't heard from him.
Maybe, yeah. What's funny? This shirt is from an event in DC, and I can't remember the name of the event now. They do it every year, and it's just like, they have all different like little acronyms. Like, they'll say Satoshi is a woman, Satoshi's, because we don't know who or what Satoshi is. And the main core of this is like, they've been advertising a lot lately, like Satoshi's wallet has this amount of coins in it, and it's now valued at this. And during this event, it's like, it's almost like you're creating this honeypot of people saying, oh my goodness, if I can just crack that, if I can just get in there and take those. First of all, it completely crashed the protocol. Because he has them
billion dollars worth total, not just Satoshi, but 600 billion of total exposed keys converted to US dollars. There's no way you get 600 billion out because the price would crash immediately. Yeah.
And it tied into everything else now too. So so this event is kind of really playing up on the Satoshi thing, and like how to be secure, how to be smart about this, like labeling of this anonymous creator that has so much of the honeypot sitting, and they're like waiting to see, like, is the wallet active? Is there ever going to be a transfer? The people so laser focused on that, and I'm like, oh, we're just leave it, let it die, like just forget about it. It's there, we know about it, but don't make it a big thing,
When is Q Day? We won't know until after it happens, and there'll be tons of debate. Was this Q Day? Was this Q Day? How about now? And I think that the only one that people would agree on that most people would agree on would be Satoshi's coins being moved. So the quantum attacker could just move everything else, and people are like, oh, it's not Q day yet because Satoshi's coins are still there. Like, that's a little bit too laser focused, guys. I mean, come on. Bitcoin's down to $100. I know Satoshi's coins are still there, but maybe we have a quantum attacker now.
Yeah.
No. Satoshi's coins are there. Couldn't be Q day yet.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little too focused, guys. A little too focused.
Yeah. Well, Ian, thank you, brother, for this. This conversation has been awesome. I don't know if you are a big like social media guy, if you want to put out your social media or like whatever you're working on, Quantum EVM, how people can find that, support that. Please feel free to do so.
Okay, so quantumevm.com has links to our Telegram, and my LinkedIn is on the staff page. The socials that we typically use are Telegram and X, but we also have Discord, and I think we have the other stuff too. We have a YouTube channel, and in our Telegram is a link to all of our podcasts, and some of them are extremely technical, and some of them are very high level. So maybe watching a few would be better than just one if you're like, well, why did he say that? The main place that I do the challenge of other blockchains and their cryptography is on Twitter. So please, this is where I'm in combat mode. And that is IanSmith_HSA. And you can see that linked from our link tree, which is Quantum EVM. And then we also have my LinkedIn is the best way to reach out for partnerships because, I'm not in combat mode there.
Well, Ian Smith, thank you. Until next time, stay sovereign, stay decentralized. Have a good one, brother.
You too.